Hey everybody, welcome. I think we'll maybe give it a minute just to let a few other people get logged in. Please feel free to say hello, give us a wave in the chat so we know we're not speaking to nobody. There we go, amazing.
There we go, we seem to be online after all. Amazing. And the tech is working, isn't it fantastic?
Fabulous. Okay, well, I think we've got lots of conversations to be had and lots to get through, so I'll get started. So hello, everybody, and welcome to this panel event that we're hosting in partnership with WorkFlex. WorkFlex are the HR Ninja's preferred partners for all things workation and work abroad travel compliance. WorkFlex was created with the goal to simplify the global workforce compliance management so that HR teams like yours can focus more on strategic initiatives. My name is Lauren, and I'm the Partnerships Manager here at HR Ninjas, and we'll be co-hosting today's webinar with the lovely Patrick, who is the co-founder and Managing Director at WorkFlex. So we've got a really insightful webinar in store for you today, deep diving into all things workplace models, from remote work to hybrid approaches to flexible work from anywhere. I think, as we all know and are moving into increasingly flexible worlds, more and more businesses are now faced with the question, what is the right working environment for my employees and what is the right workplace model? I'm sure you've all seen in the news, there's been lots of noise as well in the media recently about some very well-known businesses mandating a full-time return to office, moving away from their flexible models that were implemented during the pandemic. And we've seen loads and loads of chatter about that in the HR Ninjas community. So I really think this is going to be an insightful session for you all today. So we're going to be hearing for a few of our lovely panelists today on which approach that they take within their organizations, and what benefits and challenges come along with that model. So we've got the lovely Danielle, who is the HR Director of Bryden Wood, a dynamic HR leader with 2 decades of experience in HR. We've got the lovely Deepa, the People Director at Bupa and HR Executive with over 15 years of experience in a range of sectors, including media, telecommunications and healthcare. And we also have Michael, who is the Team Leader at TIMOCOM Marketplace. And of course, the lovely Patrick, who's going to be hosting today. Thank you all so much for being on this panel and contributing to the conversation. So I'll hand over now to you, Patrick. Please do drop any questions that you do have in the chat room, and we can involve you as much as possible and hopefully answer all of your questions at the end. Over to you, Patrick.
Fantastic. Thanks for the lovely intro and the invitation. I'm actually so excited to be here, and already before this panel, we're already starting to discuss in the group about this topic, but we had to wait a little bit to have this actually live in the audience. We now have 74 people online, so it really shows this is such a relevant topic, and we're really glad to have such a great panel here. So the main goal is that we're going to have a discussion around this topic, and we're going to have the discussion mainly with the panel that I will moderate, but also feel free to participate in the chat. So I, as a moderator, I will also pick up questions and comments from the chat. We want to have a great discussion also for you as an audience. So let us know if you want us to particularly deep dive into some topics. But before we go into this, I'm gonna start a poll actually now. So you're gonna see it in a second in the tool that we are using. And I would like to know what's the workplace model of the audience, and that also already become interesting then what kind of discussion we're going to have. So this is what's in the media. But before we're gonna start the discussion, let me do a quick intro because, yes, as Lauren already said, like coming back to the office, return to the office, it seems to be like the hottest topic in the media and on LinkedIn. Everybody's discussing it, and if you follow the news, it seems like all the companies are going back to the office. Amazon, JP Morgan, Zoom, etc. But however, we should also take a look at the statistics. So what we do see in the data is that still a lot of people work from home. So in fact, around 30% of the days that are worked from home. So if you look at the statistics, obviously we saw a huge spike during Corona, over 60% of people working from home. And then after Corona, this kind of went down, but kind of seemed to have flatlined, but we still have this discussion. So the facts are a bit different than the media, or maybe the media is telling us something what will happen in the future. This is definitely what we're going to discuss. And looking at the pure statistics, we see that companies are following very different approaches. So we have around 22% currently following a fully work from home policy. We have 43% following a hybrid approach. So also some of the panelists today to hear how this is working out. And then 34% fully on site. And we also see great differences across industries. I think that's also why it's such an exciting discussion, because clearly there isn't one solution that fits for all companies. So after this webinar, I think we're going to have some great insights on what makes a great model, but we will not have a definitive answer for all of you. I think it also depends on your DNA and across the industry. So we also see this in the statistics here. So, for example, in finance and insurance, it's allows much more room to work from home. So around 2.4 days are spent from home, whereas in other industries, and if you look at the bottom, it's hospitality and food service, but also transportation, working from home is a little bit more difficult. So it kind of it depends. And looking at this, John has already commented if I can make the screen a little bit bigger. So let me try something out if this works better. I hope it's bigger now. You confirm in the chat. I hope everybody can see. All right, and I'm so lovely to have our panel here today to kind of discuss these different approaches and how it's working out. And my first question that I have is to the panel. What is your company's workplace model? What do you have internally? And also what factors has it influenced? So let me start with you, Deepa. So, I mean, you lead HR at Bupa, your international healthcare company headquartered in the UK. What is your company's workplace model?
So we have a hybrid model for our office staff. So we allow people to work from home, work from anywhere, and we don't have a set minimum number of days that people need to be in the office or have to be around in the office. We approach that. I mean, our motto and our purpose is to help people live longer, healthier, happier lives. And so really the idea of forcing people back into the office when actually they've got lots of other things going on in their life didn't feel like it met with our purpose. So we found that actually that works incredibly well, just to let people be an adult and decide where their best place to work is.
Fantastic. So you have like a hybrid approach. By the way, I'm also quickly checking now the poll that came in, and it also seems that the majority of the audience have a hybrid approach. So it kind of depends. So I see 45% said they let the employees choose the minimum office days, but also 22% says they have in specific office days. But yeah, let's hear from our audience. Daniel, how is it at your company?
So we also have a hybrid model. So we ask that people come in 2 days a week as a minimum, but that isn't policy driven. And then we also have a 9-day fortnight, which is genuinely no extra hours or less pay. So everyone in the company, regardless of where you are based, regardless of country, has a 9-day week, so every other Friday off.
That is interesting. That's something that I have heard very often. 9-day fortnight. Like I must admit, I did not fully understand it. How does this work?
So everybody in the company has every other Friday off, like as if you're on holiday. We talk to our clients about it and talk to our employees when we implemented it a couple of years ago. And yeah, the company shuts down effectively for that day.
Fantastic. So it's basically a 4.5 work day week, if you average it out. Fantastic. Is this something that you have implemented during Corona as part of like flexible working, or was this implemented before? What led to the decision to implement? Because it seems you're like really leading the pack. Not a lot of companies have done this, so really interesting.
Yeah. So it was implemented before I joined. So I've only been at Bryden Wood for 6 months now. So I get the benefit of that. But my understanding is that essentially we're co-founder led. And that one of our co-founders came back from holiday after reading an article or something and saying, I think that we should implement this, and then just talk to people in the business around it, talk to our clients about what they think. And I think like 95% of our clients are also super understanding and really kind of respect that we're doing that, because I always say, like, if people are happy, they'll produce more happy hens, lay more eggs, that kind of thing. And it definitely seems to be the case for us.
Excellent. How do you feel is the impact on the company? Do you see a difference in happiness or other metrics?
So yeah, in happiness, we've just done an employee engagement survey. So I'm going through those results at the moment, but people feel that they have a really great work-life balance. People are very engaged and want to be here and recognise that this is a really great benefit that they wouldn't get maybe in other organisations or different industries.
Amazing. Really cool to hear how you're doing it at your company. Let's go to Michael. How is it working at your company? I mean, you lead, besides I think HR, at TIMOCOM, like a big company in the logistics sector. How's the office culture, hybrid, or
we also have hybrid
like
the others, but it depends on department. Especially IT has only to come in once a month, but other departments like sales have to come in once a week. So we have a definitely hybrid model. It's like the others. But what we try to influence, or what would influence our decision, is definitely a well-being from the employees, and also to improve the employee productivity. That's what we want to reach with this. What we also offer is vacation with WorkFlex, so we are a little bit partner, so that our employees could join could do vacation all over the world, 120 days a year. That's also we offer.
Right. So also seem to be quite flexible. You said 120 days a year, also even abroad.
Yeah.
Danielle and Deepa, how is it at your companies? Do you also have a policy that people can work from abroad?
We do, yes. So not quite 120. So ours is 20 days at the moment to work abroad. We're not quite everywhere, so we've got some issues in some countries. So there are various restrictions dependent upon the country, just from a tax perspective more than anything else. But yes, we do also offer abroad.
Yes. Yeah, so this seems to be a big topic, obviously, compliance. I mean, that's also what we do at WorkFlex. Compliance when people go abroad is a big topic that must be obviously managed. So if you obviously don't have a tool in place, it's good to be a little bit stricter, but at the same time, great that you allow it to some extent. Daniel, how is it for you?
So we don't have a policy in place. We do have offices kind of based around the world, predominantly in Europe, and we're happy for people to go and work from them and to kind of do extended holidays. It's something we've actually been talking about recently, but feel at the moment the right thing for us to do is continue with our 9-day fortnight and have that kind of flexible approach of, okay, somebody wants to go to Spain for 2 weeks, work for 1 week from our office and then have a week off, like that's absolutely fine. So we kind of don't really want to have a written policy in place. At the moment, it seems to be working for us.
Very cool. And I would also like to stop with you quickly because I see a lot of questions from the chat. This fortnight seems to be interesting to a lot of them. So I love that we have this engagement in the chat. So please continue doing this. So just a reminder for the audience, so you can always participate in the discussion either directly through the chat and ask questions, but there's also a question feature. So I will monitor both, so as you see it. But let's start with a question from Angelica, because she was asking the questions tab. With the 9-day fortnight, is your holiday allowance prorated? So how does that work?
No, it's exactly the same. So everybody gets, or depending on what country they're in, but in the UK, it's 25 days plus your 8 days bank holiday. The only difference is if you are a part-time worker, we obviously prorate your holiday based on that. And there's also a calculation that we do where you get slightly less of the free Fridays. So say you had 30 free Fridays in a year. If you were part-time, you might get 10, for example. But it doesn't impact holiday allowance. That's additional.
Got it. This makes sense. I see another question in the chat from Ravenna. She's also asking about the 9-day fortnight. And she's asking if this was somewhat related to the 4-day week, because it's also a huge part, especially the media. I know a lot of companies, they have tried it out. So was this connected to this trend as well?
Yeah, it's difficult for me to answer that because I wasn't here when they decided. But I mean, I would presume it's a similar time to people talking about a 4-day week. I think if we did a 4-day week, we wouldn't quite be able to meet our client expectations. So doing a 9-day fortnight feels like a kind of good middle ground.
Yeah. I think it's also important to remember, like whatever workplace model a company chooses kind of needs to fit to the industry, to the culture, etc. So there's no one size fits all. So the fortnight might work excellent for your company, but maybe for another company it doesn't work. Mm-hmm. But let me get to the next question. And I would like to know, what are the advantages and challenges with your workplace model? And let me start with you, Michael, because especially in your previous answer, you've also said it also kind of depends by a department. So IT has to come in once a month, sales has to come in once a week. So I have 2 questions. So first of all, how did you decide on the different models per department? And then where do you see the advantages and maybe also some of the challenges while realizing that no workplace model is perfect?
Maybe it depends on what the director decide. So the head or the director of the department decide how often the teams have to come in. And yeah, the advantage what we see is the increase of flexibility for the employees and allowing them to choose where they want to work, and also a potential for higher productivity and also job satisfaction. So we want to hold our employees. We are also in a war of talents, and this is also advantages from us or for us. Challenges, definitely ensuring that all employees are suitable with the work environment at home that meets the economic and connectivity requirements, and also maintaining the effectiveness of communication and collaboration between the employees which are on site and which are hybrid. So that's the largest challenge we have to meet it.
Can I quickly stop you there? So you said 2, I think, very interesting things. So first of all, it seems that your company also offers equipment for working from abroad. So yeah. What does this policy include? And then I'm also curious to hear more about the connectivity issues. Maybe it's somewhat related as well.
Maybe when you work fully remote, you get the full the home office stuff. So you get the laptop, the TV, the docking station, also the chair, and also the desk from us. So we sent it, and maybe if the employees will stand with us more than 2 years, they could leave it where it is. So it's just go that they could earn it. Yeah.
And is this only for people who work fully remote all the time, or also people who need to come in once a week? For
No,
example, sales that need to come once a week, do they get home office equipment like this as well, or is that a different policy?
No, just only for fully remote. The other ones we get some TVs to use also at home, maybe the older ones, but this is only for fully remote. And fully remote have to come in once a quarter.
Got it. And related to this, there's a question from the audience directly addressed, because Claire is asking if you have different policies for home office across the departments, is there an issue between the departments that they perceive the fairness to be different?
No, they are fully fine with this, because it depends that the directors or the head of have to explain why they choose this, and that's fully fine with them that you have different regulations between the different departments. Because otherwise, for IT, I understand maybe if you have a software developer, he code all time, he could do it wherever he want. He could do it, or he or she could do it maybe in Australia or in USA or whatever. It's also not depend on time or whatever.
Okay. So that helps if you have a global presence. Yeah. So with the poll, we saw that in most companies who have this hybrid approach, the employee can choose the day and they go to the office. How is this at TIMOCOM? For example, in sales, when they to the office, the employee choose, or do you have this defined as a company?
No, we have team days. So they are give by the director or the team leads. They say, okay, maybe on Wednesday, Tuesday, or whatever is a team day, and then the whole team come in for this day, and that's maybe announced just before, maybe a week before or 2 weeks before. For us in people and culture, for example, is also every time the Wednesday. So every Wednesday we are here in the office and working on here, and we know this. That's this announced already before.
Yeah. Let me ask the same question to Deepa. What are like the view approach? Where do you see the advantages, but also challenges? Because obviously no model can be perfect. And you have like, whereas you said you have 87,000 employees. So how can you make it perfect for all of them? How's it working out for you?
So it's working well. I think it's the right model for Bupa. We definitely see our engagement is high because people appreciate the fact that we are treating them like an adult, and we just say you choose best where your work is best situated. So there might be days where you think actually there's an advantage to being with people. You might find a day where actually there's the advantage of being at home. So we certainly see the advantage. We also have found it's similar to the Michael's war on talent, where actually we've been able to expand our talent pool beyond. So our head office is in London. Beyond London, we now have people working globally, we've got people working nationally, and that has definitely helped us in finding the right skill sets to move us forward. We do have challenges where we're now in a situation in our head office where Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday we have a high footfall in the office. Mondays and Fridays is very, very quiet. And so you have this peak in the midweek where you can't find the desk, you can't get a room. There can be frustrations because you've come into the office and actually you can't get the space you need to do the work, versus you go in on a Monday or Friday and there's absolutely nobody around, and so we start closing down parts of the office because it's not worth it. So there are always challenges to this, but the advantage of just saying to people you choose certainly means that we've kept a level of trust with our employees. We're not monitoring how often you're in the office. We're not keeping track of this. We're not demanding it. There are, similar to Michael, there are team meetings, team events that happen where the manager might say, actually, it would be great if you're all in the office. There's plenty of notice for that to happen. And because we're treating people like an adult, that we don't tend to get the pushback. to come into the office. People are quite excited to come back in, to have the social element to their work. And so we see it as the advantage. But yes, there are always challenges to this.
Yeah, that's very normal. Related to this in the chat, there's a question from Kaylee. She's asking if there's anything you have tried to overcome those challenges. Let's assume she's referring to the challenges of the office being super full Tuesday to Thursday. So
Yes.
What can you do?
Well, so we've started to suggest to teams that if you're going to have a big team event in the office, you might consider a Monday or Friday. You're more likely to have the space that you need to hold those meetings. So we try and suggest to people that they might consider flexing that out a bit more to accommodate the Monday and Friday. But it's a self-fulfilling cycle. You go into the office because you want the social element to your role, and so you're more likely to meet people Tuesday to Thursday. So then more and more people come Tuesday to Thursday because you know that there will be people in the office. So yeah, I don't know if there's a right answer. If somebody has the right answer, tell me, because I am scratching my head a little bit over it.
I understood. There's another interesting piece that you said about remote hiring, and I also saw the question from you, Lauren, in the chat. So Deepa, again for you, I mean, your company with a global presence, and you mentioned that for some roles or all roles, you're also hiring remotely. So what is your policy? Can you clarify a little bit? How does this work with your company?
So we're comfortable for all roles in the office to be hiring remotely. We would, in any kind of hiring, we will say the head office is here, or your team are generally located in this building. Therefore, there might be a requirement to come into the office on some kind of regular basis. Are you comfortable with that? And as long as they're comfortable that they will have to come into London at some point to meet people, then most people, again, are generally fine with that, as long as we're upfront about how often that is. And that's usually a conversation with the hiring manager to say, we have monthly team meetings, for example, and we would like you to be there in person. And most people are fine with that. But certainly hiring remotely really, really has made a difference. And similar to Michael, for anybody that works in our head office, irrelevant of whether they're London based or remote first or however it works, we provide with all the equipment that they need in order to set up their home office to a standard that would keep them safe from a health and safety perspective.
Do you have additional guidelines to remote work, for example, that you only hire within a specific time zone so that everybody is core to the team, or are you completely flexible around the world?
Completely flexible, because it will vary. There are some roles that it doesn't really matter when the work gets done. There are other roles that might be more client facing, where actually you would need to be working in a particular time zone. But again, it's a discussion with the individual. We don't assume people's circumstances. So although you might be in the UK time zone, you might have caring responsibilities or other responsibilities, or have particular needs that mean you work particular hours that might be sort of outside of core hours. That's fine if as long as the work gets done, we don't really mind.
Yeah. So I have two more questions to this. So one question from mine, I want to ask, hiring remotely, has this been a new policy also because of Corona, or have you done this before already?
Well, we did do it before, but on a really limited basis. And to be honest, actually, most of our leaders were not a fan of remote first before COVID. We like most of our leaders liked to hire people who would be in London on a very regular basis, so on a weekly basis, 2 or 3 times a week. Since the pandemic, we've seen that change. We've seen the leaders' position change as they've understood that actually you don't need to be in the office to be productive, and actually I don't need my team in the office with me in order to ensure that I have a great team and we're collaborative and working together. So yes, we did do it, but only a handful of times before COVID. Since COVID, far more.
Yeah, interesting how COVID obviously changed everything. You addressed leadership, which we're going to talk about in a second as well. I think that's an interesting topic by itself. But before addressing leadership, there's another question from Becky in the chat. And because you were mentioning that you hire people remotely, but from time to time they're coming to the office. So she's asking, are then companies paying for the travel and accommodation if people travel to the office?
It depends, is the answer. So more often than not, we will contractually base their location in the office. However, if they are abroad or particularly far away, we might base their location in a more local office and therefore pay for their accommodation back and forth. So there's no straight answer to that, unfortunately. It depends upon where they are, what the role is, and also how we've remunerated them. So if we are basing them in London, we will base their salary on a London salary base, and therefore we won't pay for their expenses on top of that because they're getting the advantage of the London wages. If we're basing them more locally, nationally, then we might pay for their expenses, but equally their salary is based upon a lower national level than it is the London wage. So it just varies.
Yes, which by itself is also a very interesting discussion. I mean, we as workers have also been observing the market, especially in the beginning of COVID, there was a lot of uncertainty. Okay, how do you pay people also abroad? It seems that like the industry consensus at least has to become that you always pay competitively by market. So this could mean, for example, in UK, you pay differently than in the US or in other countries. So what is amazing, by the way, there are a lot of questions in the chat function itself and in the questions. So keep those coming. We will address them. Also within the questions tab, the audience can also upvote questions. So this will also help us to prioritize. So there were also some questions, again, addressed to Bupa, but let's hold this for a moment because there's another topic around leadership. Deepa, you mentioned this as well. And we often perceive that individual contributors have often a very different opinion than managers or leaders on the workplace model. And let me ask you, Danielle, first, do you see differences across individual contributors and leadership?
Yeah, definitely. I think from what I said around our 9-day fortnight, that came from a co-founder, which was amazing. So that part is kind of really solidified throughout leadership and individual contributors. I think by us not having a policy around people coming in, expectations therefore are very different. So I think it varies massively whether you've been in the business for 30 years and were used to working 5 days a week, like Deepa was talking about, 9 to 5 in London, or whether we see a lot of our grads or people early on in their career wanting to be in the office more as well, because they find that they learn more and then get frustrated when perhaps there isn't that middle management as visible for them to be able to learn from. So I think that it really does depend, I think, on where you are in your career and your personal circumstances. And I really agree with Deepa in the fact that it's treating people like adults is the most important thing, and ensuring that, you know, we're commercially focused as HR is really important, but also allowing people that flexibility and empathy is essential. So yeah, I think it's going to be a constant battle. I don't think you're ever going to make everybody happy, unfortunately. But I think being as flexible as possible is always our way of kind of going in first and approaching everyone and their requests as an individual. We also have some people that are remote first or fully remote working. And just kind of on that pay thing for them to come into the office, because I'm sure it's a hot topic with everyone, because it is with us, of who we allowed to charge expenses to come into the office. If you chose to move away, and we have agreed that, so for example, might have someone based in Scotland that we've agreed they can be fully remote. One of the things that we've agreed with them is that they might still need to come into the office at least once a month, and that's going to be at their expense. However, if they've gone remote from the beginning, or if it's not too far and we're expecting them in more, then we might pay for their travel expenses for essential travel in. And again, that kind of varies depending on the circumstances, but also kind of expectations of what people get also varies dependent on level and salaries, etc.
I have a question for this, because you have the company is a decent size. On LinkedIn, you say you have around 220 employees, so you do have a policy in place. But then for these particular cases where sometimes travel is paid, sometimes not, do you have a policy, or do you manage it on a case-by-case basis? How do you manage the entire complexity with like edge cases?
Yeah. So previously very much on a case-by-case basis, and since I joined the business 6 months ago, there's definitely kind of been a moment of saying, hang on, we've grown a lot over the last 3 or 4 years, and we've got a lot of individuals on a case-by-case basis where you start to go, hang on a second, we've got more people doing this case-by-case thing than actually working what we're expecting them to. So at the moment, I'm trying to create that balance without kind of upsetting anyone essentially, or changing their working pattern. But really, I think that we need to put things like fully remote contracts. If you're on a fully remote contract, then that can be really clear. But if you're not, and your home office is London, then actually you're expected to be in at least once a week or twice a week, whatever we decide we want that to be.
Yeah, this is fantastic. And based on what you said the last few minutes, what really stuck me, and also Angelika from the chat seems to agree, said you need to treat people like adults. I think what's very unique or like interesting that this flexibility were pushed from the founders, and also with this like fortnight policy. We often feel that sometimes also pushed from the other side, from more the individual contributors. But then the question on the screen directed to you, Deepa, how do you see this? Do you have differences in opinion from leadership versus the individual contributors?
It can be. There can be differences. I mean, there can be. I think the biggest thing that's changed for everybody was absolutely the pandemic, and the leaders themselves went through this massive change curve during the pandemic. Not only were they, as individual contributors, also facing exactly the same issues as everyone else. How do you balance the home with work, etc. They were also facing this issue of how do I keep everyone connected whilst we're remote? I'm not relying on just being able to see people face to face. But the biggest thing I think we did was try and harness that. So we did this big lessons learned at the end of the pandemic, said actually what's changed in the leadership space. And the biggest thing that changed was actually leaders spent more time consciously thinking about how their employee is doing. Whereas it's very easy when everyone's in the office, you kind of walk past somebody and say, oh, that person's not okay, and therefore I will just check on them. Now as a leader, you have to consciously just check in with people. How are you? How is it going? And stop being so task focused all the time. Once we started to really articulate that for our leadership team, it became easier, I think, for most of our leaders then to understand that you don't need everybody in the office with you on every day that you're in the office. It's okay that you therefore just keep that momentum and keep consciously checking on people. There are always those types of leaders that demand, I'm in the office, therefore my direct reports in the office, and therefore they're directing you. And then you get this big filter down, and suddenly everybody's in the office every Tuesday because their leader is in the office. And it's just a constant check-in with the leader to say, actually, do you really need that to happen? And are you purposefully dictating that, or has that just been sort of a shadow of your leadership that you haven't really realised is there? And do you need to be more explicit about your expectations that are more in line with Bupa's way of treating people like an adult and letting people make their own decisions about when they're in the office or not? So Danielle's right. I mean, it's going to be a constant battle for years. It's one of the, it's another type of thing that we need to think about in HR, is when we're thinking about how we train and how we support our leaders. It's now another thing that we need to think about as to how we support our leaders to manage a team that might not be in the office with them all the time.
So you're bringing up a very big point, how HR and people departments that can also coach and influence leaders. And there's another question I have to you, and this was a question asked by Kelly a few minutes ago, and asking, in areas where the senior leaders are choosing their approach for the team, do you see any advice for influencing, supporting senior leaders to think about the benefits of flexibility, negotiating ways of new working? You were mentioning that also the different approaches on how to check in with the employees. Do you have any measures in place, or do you coach your leaders in the company on how to work with these different working models?
We do, and we saw actually, it was probably 6 months or so after everybody started, the pandemic had finished in the UK, or people were starting to return to the office in the UK. We certainly saw some leaders starting to demand. We heard this sort of, some leaders were demanding that their teams return while others leaders weren't. And that inconsistency, we all know in HR, that inconsistency, it can be incredibly damaging for a culture of an organisation. And so the constant question we just ask is why? Why do they have to go back into the office? Talk to me about what the benefit is. And really, there's often no massive benefit to this demand of I must be in the office every day, other than the leader's own style or the leader's perception of how productivity would work. But when we did a whole load of data on this, and we looked at this, and actually there's no change in productivity between people that are remote first and people that are in the office most days. We see no difference, provided the leader role models that environment. And as I said before, actually often what we found is the leader hadn't really thought about the shadow that they were casting across their team. And so we have some leaders who do like to be in the office, but they're very explicit to say, my preferred working style is to be in the office. I have no expectation that you should be there too. And that definitely makes the difference, is being really, really clear with the leader. So it's just a constant question from the HR team as to why. Why is it important that your team are with you in the office? And you can usually counter most things, most reasons.
Wow, I think that's super interesting insight. I mean, you manage over 80,000 people, and you just said you have so many different working models. You don't notice any differences in performance based on working models. So this is opposed to what we often read in the media, that yes, performance is higher in the office. But you're saying this is not true. You don't see this in the data of thousands of employees that you manage.
No, there's no difference. There's no difference whatsoever. We have had occasions where there have been employees who effectively have never returned to the office. And there you do see a productivity difference. If you never go back into the office, you do quickly lose a connection with the wider Bupa. As you said, we're so big that it's really easy to get lost and lose yourself between what you're trying to do and what Bupa overall is trying to do. So there is a point of inflection where you say, actually, you need to come back in for to feel almost like the social anchor. I tend to refer to it as, you need that anchorage point of going back into the office. But you might only need it once every quarter. You might not need it very often. It just depends upon your work, depends upon your personality, depends upon your level of experience. Just depends.
And this is interesting because that addressing to you now, Michael, you were previously mentioning that your company, you have a policy that in IT, they need to be once in the office. So this seems to be similar to what Deepa saying. There needs to be at least some connection to the office, could be once per quarter at some point. Because before there was also a question by Tamsin, and she was asking directly to you, Michael, how do you manage employees who don't come in on the expected office team day?
Maybe it's go in the same direction from what Deepa said before. Just explain the why. And in Germany, the leaders have to explain why they need the employees in the office, and because of connection to the other colleagues and other stuff. And maybe they understand it and they come in, and also that's really working, because if you come in once a month or once a week, if you know it before, maybe you can plan the whole week, and that's what we learned also in the past, and that's also fine for all our employees. But it was just by explaining why the leader needs a team here in the office or not.
Fantastic. And that seems we have a lot of consensus here in this panel, because Deepa was also saying you need to explain the why. Why does somebody need to be in the office, or why not? Why can somebody work remotely? I think it seems to be important that the why question is answered. Let me go back to the next topic. Next question. What metrics do you use to measure the success of your workplace strategy? What results have you seen so far? And let's stick with you, Michael, for now. How do you manage this?
Yeah, we do an employee survey once a year, also to ask regarding our benefits. And the benefits have the highest satisfaction rate from all the employee survey from our employees. And that's also part. So we measure this.
Do you also have rating what's like the most popular benefit? Do you measure this?
Yes. Yeah. And also the hybrid model is one of the popular, that the employees have the freedom to choose where they could work. And that's what they really enjoy.
Fantastic. So you mentioned at the beginning you also use WorkFlex to manage vacations when people go abroad. I know before the webinar we talked a little bit, and you also had some statistics on about where people work abroad.
Let me check. I have to dial in, and maybe give me a minute. I would check this. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. No worries. Because then in the meantime, I will ask the same question to Danielle. How do you measure this? Do you also have a employee survey, like Micah at TIMOCOM, or how do you do it?
Yeah, so we've just done our first employee engagement survey, and we've just got the results of those a couple of weeks ago. What we've also started doing is tracking office attendance, to be able to share that with our senior leaders and board directors. Like I mentioned, we don't want to have a policy, but actually what we're finding from our feedback, both in the survey and just kind of verbally around the office, those kind of water cooler conversations that do happen when you're in, is that it is the same people who tend to come in more often and the same people who don't come in at all. So we were tracking by department and by location, but actually now we are doing individual tracking and sharing that with people to kind of empower them to be able to say, okay, you haven't been into the office for a while. Is there anything that we can do? Or is there a day that would make it easier for you, and try and arrange like a team meeting or lunch or something like that? So, and we also have things around, because we're now tracking that, we do things like pre-payday breakfast, encourages people in on the week before payday. It's always less attendance. So encouraging people to come in then, and also running things like their office drinks or weekly yoga classes on quieter days, we find really helps. So Deepa, you were talking about that Monday and Friday. We have exactly the same thing. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you can't find a desk. And Monday and Tuesday are so quiet. So kind of doing those things on different days really helps encourage people to come in when it might be less busy.
We have one question from the chat that you about the topic that you just said, and Becky is asking, how do you manage to track office attendance? Because it seems like you just implemented something. How do you do this?
So everyone has a fob when they come into the office, and we can see who's in and who's not. It's quite easy.
Well, easy like that, huh?
Yeah, have a fob. You're in or you're out.
There you go. Michael, let's get back to it. Were you able to check some data?
Yeah, I will share my screen.
Oh, yeah, that would be fantastic.
Let me check here. Normally, you should see my screen. Hopefully, it works.
Not yet. Let's see if the tech is working for us today. This is what I always say. It's 2025 and we still have problems with the video conferencing. At least the video and the voice worked. Otherwise, it would have been a horrible discussion. We can live a little bit of lack of screen.
Seems to me not. Maybe I'll try again.
Again, otherwise we do it verbally.
Okay. Here we go.
Now something seems to be loading.
Yeah.
All right. So the questions for everybody to remember, we face out questions like, you at TIMOCOM, you allow people to work from abroad, and then I was asking, do you have statistics on this where people work from? So yeah, Michael, tell us.
That is our statistic that we have. We allowed that this is from roughly now 2 years. That's the number of requests we got in the whole time. We have 500 employees here, so you see, our employees really ask for this. We approved the most of them, and here you could see at what time they really want to. Normally, you see it here. It's during the summer holidays. And what you also could see here, maybe that is the countries what they want to work on. So this is Italy, it's the favorite one, Spain, Netherlands, Turkey, Slovenia and Turkey, that are the most one. As you could also, we have also a risk assessment, and we only have a high risk on 24 risk assessments, so we delete them, and we do not allow these 24 the employees, and that's really really low if you see how many requests we have.
Fantastic. So this is a lot of requests working from abroad. You seem to accept 87% of those. So I assume some of them are not accepted because there's a high compliance risk. So I guess you have people to take a holiday. What are the other reasons that requests do not get accepted?
Where we did not approve a space, maybe when a sales guy decided to tell us, okay, I have to sign a contract aboard, then it's not allowed regarding the tax that we have the risks that we build up in subsidiaries there, and then we tell them, okay, please don't do this, and the risk is medium or low, so we could approve this. This could maybe one result of this, for example.
Fantastic. Yeah, really great insights. Thanks a lot for sharing, Michael. Let me share my screen again. And yeah, this webinar has been absolutely fantastic. So if there are any additional questions, please put them in the chat. We have around 5 more minutes. The last topic that I want to talk about, and Mike just addressed it, but also Deepa, you addressed it as well, is compliance topics when people work abroad. And that's very quickly would like to introduce WorkFlex, the company that I founded. Because when people work abroad, this is fantastic, as we've learned, to at least some extent of flexibility. But there's a lot of compliance topics, and we see this mainly for workations or work from anywhere. This was part of this discussion today, but this is also true for like business trips and also for assignments. And this topic is so important at the moment when we talk to clients, because there's more people working abroad, let it be on work from anywhere, as you TIMOCOM or what you described, Deepa, but also business trips. But there's also a lot of pressure with new regulations coming, constant changes. Now in the UK implemented the travel authorizations, the EU something we follow as well. And then also like a lot of geopolitical tension, so probably this will not become easier. Michael, you said if you do not allow people to go abroad, most of them it's happened. This is often because of compliance risks. So these are the 8 compliance mentions. So when companies think about compliance, this is what you need to think about. So these are work entitlement topics. I think one of the topics that companies are most worried about is like permanent establishment, which is related to tax topics such as employment tax, with social security. So some of the audience may have heard of A1 certificates that kind of solve this problem. With PWD, labor law, data protection, health and safety, a lot of topics. And all of these are obviously super complex because it depends where employees are going to, the duration, nationality, do they work in sales or not. So that's where we with WorkFlex come in. So we are a software company and support companies in managing this. So Michael just shared his screen, also showing us some data. So we do this for business trips, work from anywhere, vacation and assignments, and kind of manage this. And we do this now for around 500 companies. So it's the quick intro also about WorkFlex, how some companies are managing it. And with this, let me, before we finish up, also screen the chat if there are any additional questions. Otherwise, let me go and quickly ask, starting with you, Danielle, the last words. How do you see, we talked about work from anywhere, home office, how do you see this trend continuing in the next 3 years? What are you expecting to happen?
I mean, what a question. How long is a piece of string? I think that there will be some businesses, kind of probably a lot of the bigger places that we've seen in the headlines where you pay a lot of money for your office building. I think they'll be the ones that are mandating and will continue that way for people to be in the office. I think smaller businesses like ours will continue with hybrid and continue listening to employees, and we will adapt as we need to make sure that we keep that top talent and make sure that we continue to attract them.
Fantastic. I think it's a great closing statement from the audience. It has been fantastic. Let me pass over to you, Lauren. Thanks for hosting us and inviting all of us, for organizing it.
No problem at all. My pleasure. Yeah, I'd just like to close the session by saying a massive thank you to you guys, our panelists, for your insights in today's session. And of course, to everybody who attended today. I think this is one of the webinars where we've seen the most questions ever. So thank you for being so engaged in the chat. If you do still have more questions regarding remote working or compliance, please do feel free to post them in the HR Ninjas Facebook group. We'll tag Patrick and Leva, and I'm sure they'd be really happy to answer your questions. So yeah, thank you so much again for joining us on this session, and we'll see you in the next one. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.